Okay, this is the cat-cow. So start on your hands and knees and think about elongating the spine. So pushing your head one way and your hips in the other way. Now we're going to move one vertebral segment at a time. So each bone in your spine, we're going to move that towards the ceiling, starting with the lower back. So imagine having a line of dots running from your navel, your belly button, all the way to your neck. What we're going to do is take each one of those dots one at a time towards the ceiling, then take each one of those dots one at a time towards the floor. You want to initiate the movement with your lower back, then move up towards your head, and the last thing to come along for the ride is the cervical spine and then the head. So apart from the obvious benefits of reducing stiffness and feeling much better, we want to restore blood flow to the spine and the musculature around the back, and we want that to be a daily thing. We also want to get better every day at switching on these small muscles so that when we're hiking with a heavy backpack, when we're skiing, when we're climbing, we've got more control, we've got more engagement of our midsection, which means less falls, which means less injuries and much better performance. This is hip swivels. We're going to sit on the ground in this lounge chair position, elbows straight, hands behind you, and feet flat on the ground. We're going to start by externally rotating the right knee and then internally rotating the right knee. What's important here is that the hips stay on the ground whilst you're going through this movement. So you don't want to come so far off that the butt actually comes off the ground. We want to keep that glute locked down on the ground. So we're going to go through 10 reps, internal and external, through this position, and we're trying to actively pull the knee down to the ground there, and then internally rotate as much as we can without the hip coming off the ground. Once we've got 10 reps, we change to the other side. Exactly the same deal. First few reps are going to be pretty tight, and you might find that it pinches the hip a little. If that's the case, you might want to move the foot further away and just see if that relieves that tension and stops the pinching. But this is all with the aim of getting a greater range of motion, global range of motion through our hips. So that's why we are trying to come all the way to the ground with that knee, but then actively using our muscle to pull out on the other side. So now that we've done that, we're going to do a little more a relaxed version, both legs at the same time, and we're going to go all the way to the ground. Now the hip can and will come off the ground, so this is just a little bit more of a more dynamic, more free form sort of drill, where we're just becoming a little bit more comfortable rotating through the whole range of motion of our hips. And I love to do this before I get into a set of squats or any kind of lower body work, because it just makes my hips feel so much better. That is hip swivels. This is the hip hinge. We're going to initiate the movement by hinging forward at the hips, sending your butt back and keeping your torso nice and straight and tall. Place that toe of the non-working leg around about where your heel is, and that's going to set up a good position for your feet for this movement. Only go as far down as you can without bending your back. You want to keep your chest out and shoulders back the whole time. That way we ensure that we're really engaging the hamstring, which is what this is designed to do. You can keep your hands behind your back to ensure that you're not bending your back. That's a nice little tip if you're starting out with this movement. Grip the ground with your working foot, so the toe, the outside of the heel and the outside of the foot should be active. Keep the working knee completely straight, not even a slight bend in that hamstring, and only place as much weight as you are comfortable onto the working leg. And that's what that back foot is there for you to just manage how much of your body weight you're putting into this movement. You really want to work on the depth of this movement. Once you've done that, you can come into this single leg deadlift where you start lifting up that back leg. And this is going to be more challenging for the hips and the balance here. So you go two different progressions there to choose from, but I'd really focus on just working with the hip hinge to start off with. Really make sure you keep your chest out, shoulders back, and stand nice and tall, and like I said, keep that knee in full lockout. That's the hip hinge. This is a 90-degree hip lift. Well, before we do that, we're going to get started just by getting comfortable sitting on the floor with our knees at 90-degree angles. Now, if this is difficult, we want to slowly work into this position in that twisting motion that I'm doing, and we're moving towards the ankle and the knee that is behind us. So if this is difficult for you to start off with, the best thing to do is to boost up your butt with a cushion or a block of some description, just so you can sit in that position and stay reasonably upright with a nice straight back and not have any hip impingement. But that impingement, if you're feeling it, is what we're going to be working on and what we're going to be improving in the next drill as well. So boost your hips up if you need to. Start by doing 10 to 15 reps of the twist, and then we'll get into the hip lift. So from that sitting position, what we're going to do is raise ourselves up onto our knees and to our feet, thrusting our hips forward until they're completely locked out and we're nice and straight from our knees to our shoulders. Then we slowly lower down back into the starting position, and we're completing reps of 15 to 20 on each side, going nice and slow and under control. You might find that even within a set of 15 to 20, you're able to increase your hip mobility enough so that you come further down into that seated position, so you can remove one cushion or get a bit lower and really feel the effectiveness of this exercise at opening up your hips. I can't stress enough how important it is to go slow and under control with this exercise, so we're actually using the muscle to bring us up into that top position. You don't want to use momentum. Totally okay to throw your hands out in front of you to get a little bit of counterbalance and a little bit of assistance as you come up, but this is all about going slow and under control. Finally, there is the 90-90 transitions, which is the most difficult progression, and over time you can move into this one. We're going to be starting in that original seating position and then transferring our knees to the other side without any assistance from our upper body. So we want to make this as smooth as possible and as controlled as possible, going from starting position on the left side through to the right side. And you'll notice that in the middle is where it's the most challenging, and that's because you're essentially sitting in a squat in that position. And you guessed it, this is about improving your squat depth and your squat mobility. Okay, this is the down dog press. There's a couple of different ways you can do this, basically straight knees or bent knees. If you're doing this bent knee variation, you just keep a slight bend in your knee, and the focus with this will be to press your chest towards your knees as far as you can, so getting that back as flat as possible, and it's great for really opening up the shoulders. So we want to place your hands about shoulder width apart, and then as you press into the movement, you want to depress your shoulders. So in other words, you want to do the opposite of a shrug with your shoulders. And then we want to force your chest through as far as you can go, pushing the chest towards the knees, hopefully a little bit further in every rep. It's important that you keep your hands pressed hard into the ground, your elbows are locked out, and that we are retracting the shoulder blades, so we've got a nice flat back as we push into the top of that position, keeping your hips nice and high. So that's the first variation. Now you can see I'm starting to straighten my knees a little bit here, and that is the second variation, and that's really good for stretching that whole posterior chain, so everything from your butt through to your heels. And if you're not the kind of person that can get their heels on the ground and their palms on the ground at the same time in any of these kind of moves, this is a great exercise to do daily for loosening up the posterior chain. And I find that it's such a good combination because it's a bit of upper body for the lower body. It's a great little warm-up for doing between heavy sets of any kind of exercise or as a warm-up as well. So this is a shoulder extension stretch. So shoulder extension means basically just having your arms behind you as opposed to shoulder flexion, which would be raising your arms up in front of you. So you want to place your hands on the ground, keep your elbows straight, and shuffle forward as far as you can. Now, if you're super tight in the shoulders, you might not be able to get very far. The most important thing here is that you just spend some time in this position and you will improve over time. But just keep your shoulders rolled back and down, so you don't want the shoulders to roll forward. Keep the elbows straight, and as you become more comfortable, you can slowly shift your hips away from your hands, and that's going to put a lot of stress into the top of the shoulder, the deltoid, and the bicep as well. You might feel a significant stretch running from the elbow up to the shoulder. So one thing that we can do to progress the shoulder extension stretch is to come into this table rock. So what we're doing here is we're lifting our hips up off the ground, squeezing our glutes, and lifting your hips as far as you can, ideally up to the knee/shoulder level. When you get up into this position, squeeze your glutes to protect your lower back, and that's part of the movement. We want to be building glute strength here. So coming back down to the ground, hips or butt rest gently on the ground, and then come up into the next rep. You might not be able to come up as far as I'm coming up. That's totally fine. It will come with time. If you're really having trouble in shoulder extension, forget about the rocks and just sit in that position with your hands behind you. Eventually you'll be able to put some more pressure onto your upper body, just gently take your hips off the ground, and over time you'll be able to gain more movement and lift your hips up into the full rep position. But this is a great thing to do daily. I think it's one of the most crucial things that are missed in general exercise. So this is something that I recommend you do as often as possible. So the dead hang is one of the best and most simplest exercises for improving your shoulder health in general. And what I'm doing here is just relaxing my muscles completely and just literally hanging from my skeleton in this position on the rings. Now you can do this from a doorway, you can do it from a pull-up bar, anything that's going to hold your weight safely. Now the difference between a dead hang and an active hang is now you can see that I'm engaging my muscles and using my musculature of my upper back in order to support myself. So both are good moves, but I suggest starting with a dead hang, working from 20 seconds up to 60 seconds, and support yourself with something if you need to just ease yourself into this movement.